Uh, We're going to resume. We're quite a bit ahead of schedule, or at least about an hour ahead, I guess, at this juncture. I'm sure that'll change our conversation. The next discussion is downtown, and specifically two areas, could be more. I think Milton, you brought to the agenda both of these, walkability and dead zone, and I'm sorry, yes.
We skipped something in other for the last section.
Oh, okay.
There was an MFTE discussion.
It's under general city issues.
Is that in your agenda?
MFTP. Well, it could be tomorrow.
Well, it's in the section that's general city issues. I don't know if it's under other idea.
Yeah, it was under other for the last section.
That's something you want to add?
Yeah.
Okay,
We got time.
sure. What?
So there's a memo in your pack, but essentially what it's talking about is coming to an understanding on what the affordability should be for the 12-year multifamily tax exemption. And so as you may recall, I came to you council last fall with this ordinance. And as such, we wanted to talk about the level of affordability associated with the 12-year multifamily tax exemption. And so we tabled that discussion so I could get some more information. And the table that's on the back of my memo was from Arch, and we put together some information on what the profitability could look like on different levels of affordability. And keep in mind that there's really an enormous amount of different variations that you could calculate. So we kind of just took a look at a 100-unit building based on some current prices. And so what he's generally saying is that in this situation, if it was a 12-year MFTE, that anything pretty much less than 60% would be hard to pencil. But keep in mind, you could build different types of models or projects that could get 50% to pencil. And we are seeing a 50% affordable unit being constructed right now in Kirkland. And so it is a possibility. And so I don't want you to think that just because this says that this 50% won't work, that it's not going to work across the board for all the different projects. And so what my plan was to come back to you at the end of this month with the ordinance and have a percentage plugged in for the 12-year level of affordability for multifamily tax exemption. And I wanted to get a consensus from you.
David.
Yeah, I guess with my serving on the Affordable Housing Task Force and other task forces and committees before that, I'm really concerned 50% is just not enough. That maybe there's got to be a way that we could get some subsidies involved. There's got to be a way that we could get perhaps Arch involved on some to help bringing this down. Because with over 10,000 people retiring every day, and the fact that most of these people don't have a plan for it, don't have the money put away. As a matter of fact, over 75% of the population has less than $25,000 in the bank. So, I mean, these numbers are pretty staggering. And if we look at what's happening, we're running into a huge crisis, and we need to start figuring out how can we get below that 50% level.
Brent?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I actually really enjoyed this. And it took me a while to figure out everything, even with all the footnotes, but actually when you turn down the music and just concentrate, it actually makes sense. And so I really like this. And what it told me though is that there is enough room to change things to get to the 50%. And one of the numbers, when I was telling you in the break, I actually ran it with, instead of the 28 bonus units, at 35 bonus units. And then that broke down to $140,000 land use benefit, which all of a sudden made it more feasible at like a 50% AMI or even a tad under that. And so while I don't disagree with a thing the mayor just said, I feel like, you know, if we set it too low, it's going to be less of a benefit because nobody will do it. So we have, whatever we do, we just have to make it so that there's an incentive to do it. And I think this chart helps immensely in understanding that you can create all the policy you want to make it look good, but if it doesn't pencil out for a developer, then there's no point in even making the policy. And so I love using this as a tool, and hopefully we can make it where there's enough, bonus units or some other variable that's in there that we can manipulate a bit to make it beneficial.
Stacy and then Nigel.
What he said again, so I'm just gonna go after you every time, so I don't have to talk. But basically, that's the same thing, is my heart wants to be 50% or lower, but if nobody's gonna use it, there's no point in doing that. I would rather see something that's 2% that is actually gonna get used and built than us put it down at 30, 40, 50% and nobody's gonna do anything. So where I am exactly on what to pick, I'm not sure, but it resonated when the developers came and said, hey, you put in this TOD, but it doesn't pencil out for anybody, so it's not doing anything. And I feel like we really need to keep that in mind when we pick whatever level we're gonna pick here, because if they're not gonna build it, you're not gonna get anything.
Nigel, David, and then Milton.
Essentially what Stacy said, and this really drove home though for me that we need to be lowering it. The 85% that we set it to isn't producing what we need as far as affordable housing goes. And we can definitely go lower and still get, have developers be profitable. So I'd like to figure out if there's other ways to get it down to 50, like you was talking about, or like customer service was talking about. But yeah, I'd rather see this actually used and actually get some affordable product at a meaningful rate. 60% is still meaningful. It's not as meaningful as I'd like, but it's a far better than 85% right now. So
David and then Milton.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right, 50%, 60% is better than nothing, but I would like to have the means to buy it down. In other words, if there's sources that we can tap into to buy that down with the developer, that's what I'd like to see to get us down closer to the 30, 35% level. And I think some of those funds are out there.
So as I looked at this kind of contention, we want as much benefit to people as possible, but if nobody builds it, it doesn't help us. And I thought the 60% is significantly better than 85% in my mind. And I think something would actually have a chance of happening at 60%. I think anything less than that, it's unlikely to happen. So that would be sort of my opinion.
I'd like to see if we can just bend the edge a little bit more. I mean, I'm curious, Kirkland has, arguably considerably higher land values than we do, and yet they're able to do 50%. How are other jurisdictions doing this and getting it done and getting developers to bite? If there's any way we can get it to at least 50%, I mean, that's not a magical number. I like 60 a lot better than 85 too, but if we can get it even lower, that would be, I'd like to see us explore anything we can do to get it to 50.
Brent and then David.
So I think one of the reasons they can do it is because I think they can get either a higher retail price for the finished unit or higher rents. So it makes their model, it's more profitable. Because if you think about it.
talk about the market.
Yeah, right.
Well, the market itself is higher, so 50%.
No, because there's market, because with these, you're providing the affordable, but then the rest of the units are market rate, right?
Right, got it, okay. I
Yeah,
understand.
because if you think about it, Kirkland, for instance, their construction costs are almost going to be what ours are,
Right,
almost exactly the same, other than maybe difference in some fees.
right, I understand,
But, so it's really, and the land isn't that much more, but the benefit of
right.
the market value.
And you gotta remember, Kirkland is not central downtown Kirkland where these units are necessarily going, We have Kingsgate and other areas there in
Sure.
Kirkland where the property
Right.
values are much less,
Right.
where a lot of that would fit. So, and Kirkland is like 85,000 people now. It's a very, very large city because of their annexation, so they have a lot of area to work on.
My thought is, even if we put something in what we write as 60%, it doesn't mean we couldn't go to a special developer and say, hey, can we get 50% for this project if we somehow bring some extra funds to the table, right? It wouldn't exclude us from working a special deal, even if we put 60% in the paper you write.
That's correct. If a good example, a good tool would be a development agreement. And so if we went through a development agreement, then of course, we don't have to stick to these numbers. We can change those as we want to going forward. And also keep in mind, you can change this section of the code pretty much anytime you want. And so if there is something that comes up later, sooner or later, and you guys are just really interested in changing this number higher or lower, it's at your discretion.
Jason?
So you worked this out with Arch. Do you have any like developer contacts you could run 50 or 60% by and see if they just like laughed at the door, or if they had, you know, if they have any like real world developers that would, you know, they would fight on something like this, or where they would fight at? I don't know.
I've talked to 2 or
Main
3
Street,
different developers regarding the 50%, and including one of them that was looking at, who brought this to our attention earlier on about the need to do this. And they're telling me that the 50% is too low for them to have it pencil out. But, you know, take that with a grain of salt. I mean, it is a developer, they're trying to get as much bang for their buck. I look at stuff like what Kirkland's doing, and if it's working out, if the, you know, there's ways that they could get it to work out, then I think I think it'll happen. And keep in mind, and this is just for additional 4-year tax exemption. And so you still have the 8-year tax exemption with no additional affordability units. And so we'll probably see more of that. That's going to be just an 8-year tax exemption, and you're meeting the TOD level of affordability. About 10%. There's different variations on how much percentage those affordable units are. And so this is just one more incentive. If somebody wanted to do an additional 4 years with tax exemption, they'd have to do 25% of the units total, which state law for multifamily tax exemption is only 20%. And so back in 2013, when we changed it to 85%, we changed it up to 25%. So this would require 25% of the units to be affordable. And so I think it, you know, it's just another tool that we're putting in the show.
So do you, I've actually, because we're so focused on the 12-year, I forgot about the 8-year without the affordability. And if, so they provide that many more affordable units, do you think there's really that much benefit? I mean, it makes me then wonder why they would do this versus the 8-year without the affordability.
That was our original thought when we started this code amendment, was why would somebody really take advantage of that 12-year with the 50% affordability? And Arthur Sullivan, we met with him, he was really adamant about at least providing that level of affordability if somebody wanted to take that route or take that option. And so we kind of threw that in there after getting started.
To kind of just add to that, so also you have discretion project by project whether to approve this 8 or 12 years. So you're putting the mechanism in place, but you still will have discretion project by project to approve it. Could there be a scenario where a project comes in for 8 years and the council could say, no, 12, and we're not going to approve this unless you do 12?
I think, like you said, this is at your discretion. So if you don't want to approve an 8-year, you could not approve an 8-year. And if you're looking at doing a 12-year, then you can consider a 12-year.
So can I ask you another question on this? So the developer with the project in 82, was that because it was outside of the TOD? That's in the TOD.
It's in the TOD.
So why didn't the developer come to us then and say, this is what your code says, but I'd like to be able to do this?
Because the tool is not in place in the TOD right now.
At all?
At all.
Okay,
The MFT is limited to certain areas of the city.
okay, that's what it is, thank you.
So is there any just not to do 8 years? Because there's no affordable component and we're looking for affordability, you just do the 12-year?
Well, keep in mind, the MFTE incentive, the 8-year incentive, is to get somebody to do a TOD project. And so those TOD projects, they have affordable unit requirements. And so that's the component or the model that we're trying to get. is the TOD projects. And like you guys have seen, we're getting a lot of townhome projects, and we're just trying to incentivize them to do a TOD. And so even with the 8-year, you're gonna have to do the level of affordability that's required for a TOD.
Because you have those big density bonuses in the TOD.
That's correct. And that's how much more you go over the underlying zoning code is how much less affordable those percentages of those units get. And so there's different tiers. And so it's roughly about 10% across the board, but there's levels of affordability within those increases of density over the underlying zoning.
But given our number of units that we have to plan for, it seems to me that it just behooves us to not develop that TOD at 24 units an acre and just, get the density of the 150, 160 units per acre. I mean, I'm not a developer, so I don't know, but it seems to me like you sure make a lot more money on property if you're developing 150 units per acre versus 24 units per acre.
Possibly. We have a lot of smaller pieces of property in our TOD, and so you'd be doing an assemblage of property. And so in order to take that risk and, to sit around for a couple of years to assemble some property, whereas you could just take a couple pieces you have already and flip them as a townhome development, you could probably get a pretty quick return on the investment a lot faster than sitting on it for a couple of years and.
Yeah, but that to the best advantage of the city, what we're trying to do to maximize.
Deborah?
Yeah, I mean, this brings up a larger question. I mean, to me, it's like, okay, so we have this TOD in place, nobody's biting in the way that we want. I mean, do we really think that this, with its kind of marginal, advantage to a developer, if we push it the way we're looking at, would actually increase the likelihood that a developer would do this? Or do we need to do something like land assembly to make it easier, or something else to make it easier for a developer to do what we want them to do?
There's a lot of things that we could do, and maybe we just do them step by step. This is the first step of a multi-step project that we look at. I don't think that doing this right now could actually hurt anything. I mean, if we're looking at trying to get a TOD project and we add this incentive, and let's just say that this works for one or two, but it's not as quick a rate as you want, then maybe in the next couple of years you start to look at other options and what's available and fiddling with the code and making different changes here and there.
So, looking at the TOD, looking at the land that's available in that TOD with the wetlands there, given the fact that those wetlands now are encroached upon by asphalt and parking, isn't there something that we could do to allow the building without tearing out all of the asphalt and putting in a non-existent buffer? Is there things that we could do in that area to improve the supply of buildable land for somebody who did accumulate property?
There are some ways we can get around allowing people to encroach the wetland buffers in those areas that are already pre-developed and asphalted, as you're mentioning. So if there's a TOD project that comes in that's near the Swamp Creek, we can take a look at some ways to get those projects a little more room.
Okay. Anything else on this? Deborah?
I guess I just don't know how the world works very well, but it feels like we're kind of sitting back and waiting for, and I just look at Brent because you know a lot more about this, kind of sitting back and waiting for a developer to approach us and to like infer that we could make this flexibility or assume that we could do something or figure it out themselves and then approach us. I mean, is there any way to be more proactive about this, to kind of, as I think Rob said it, take the ball into our own hands and try to create what we want there with a developer? And again, just tell me, no, that's not how it works.
Well, I think what we're talking about here today is just one more tool that might increase the chances that it'll happen.
Yeah.
So I don't think it hurts to move forward with what we're talking about, but you're right. Well, it's still kind of a passive approach where we set the table and hope somebody comes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that really is all we can do, is make sure our regulations are in place, so when a developer shows up, that everything's in place, ready for them to go.
Well, and we can take one step forward and, one step further, I mean, and, go into the land assembly and work with Arch.
We've done it before, so,
And we did that before, that
I know.
turned out pretty well.
Yeah, exactly.
In the end, it did.
What?
In the end,
Well, I know, a 10-year
Yeah.
odyssey, I know, but yeah, it was, yes, including tanking of the economy and everything else.
I think there was some turnover on the council because. of-
Where?
There was?
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just saying, are there any, short of that? Is there, I mean, we are having a developer forum, so maybe that's a question.
I think what you're talking about is like, it's what we all always think about at the city. It's like, how do you make things happen?
Yeah.
In your city? And it's always that tension between creating the perfect environment or for somebody else to come in and do it, let the market do it, or to take the initiative to make it happen. And, you know, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about what we did on 175th with the zoning before to make it more attractive to utilize some of the older buildings there for breweries or whatever. And it was like, that was like, to me, going really an extra mile to try to make something happen. And I'd like to think it had some effect. And so I guess maybe we just keep trying to make it as attractive as we can. I wouldn't be opposed to trying to get into doing it ourselves, but I just feel like I'd much rather see the market do it than us have to take charge of it.
Okay, anything else on this?
We'll come back.
So do we have to pick a level today?
I'm kind of getting the sense that it's 60%. Am I wrong? Okay, so we'll come back, with an ordinance for you guys to consider.
60% with the
60%.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Now, we're gonna hop to downtown. Go, take us there.
So a couple of years ago, we talked about, walkable downtowns, and we read that book on the topic, and it feels to me like we've done a really good job with the piece we did have control over, that we purchased, with this town square, with having control enough and getting a sit-down restaurant and having a hangar building. So the pieces we've actively pursued, I feel really good about. But it feels like the rest of 181st from like 65th to 73rd, it feels like we've been too passive. Every time I drive by that sign that says pediatric dentist, I cry. Okay, because what I would like to have seen was something retail on the bottom floor. People can go up one floor to go to a pediatric dentist. Okay, there's not going to be any extra benefit to being on the lower floor. So can we do something in those blocks of pursuing the owners there and trying to envision them and say, okay, we've created this cool zoning stuff, so you can make some money on your property. We can get something that the citizens will want to go and buy, some commercial things, a reason to go downtown. And yes, you can build, the height and do different things. We want you to be successful with this property. I think some of them, they have an idea. I want another, storage building, okay, because that's their model. Well, can we somehow help them see that there are better uses for this that they would benefit too? So I guess it's just that more proactive, and you look at some of the spots that I call dead zones. So that one book said like every 200 feet, you have to have something interesting to look at. A reason to walk down the street and a reason to walk back up the other side. So you got the back of Safeway, kind of hard to do much there. There's not a lot of space.
Mural.
Then you got the storage, and then you got the car wash. So I don't know, can we just be more proactive to reach out to those owners, get them all in one room at one time and have somebody, like Rob, give them a state of the city speech all for them, just for them. The state of 181st or something, I don't know. But it feels like the passive approach isn't working.
A couple of years ago, we sort of did a little bit of that. We reached out to the, Ben Holtz, the property owner for the storage building, and tried to get him to enter into a development agreement that would put, more of a mixed use along 181st. And, he told us that his business is storage, and it's not, retail or residential.
And he knows that that property he owns is not zoned for storage.
But it's like a family practice doctor trying to get somebody to stop smoking, okay? Every time you see him, you just hit him again, hit him again, hit him again. Eventually, people change.
does work.
Who knows?
It
If
does work.
someday, he may say, I see what you've been talking about the last 10 years.
Different than Brian.
Yeah, well, and to tag on that, there's something called motivational interviewing. Where you actually, ask the question, so how's that working for you? In this current model, how's that working for you as a city? How's that working for you as a property owner? And it's, can we envision something that would work better, and entice, the property owners or other developers to make it worth their while? I totally agree. I have the same reaction when I go past that sign. And past Safeway, which I do all the time. It's like, can we at least get a mural there? I mean, it's really, this is supposed to be our little downtown, and we've done such a good job with the little core with Diva and Seaplane and that piece. It's like, can't we go a little further,
More.
So, yeah.
Brian, Brent, Stacy.
I couldn't agree with you guys more. And, we try to talk to the property owners, for example, even the one across the street, Breckenridge property. When he came into the pre-application meeting, we were sitting down meeting with him like, hey, what if we did a mixed-use, multi-level building? You can have office in it, you can have retail, even if it was access to parking from underneath, from back behind, right? And we had all kinds of ideas for him. And, everything that we had come up with would be shot down. And of course, right now, what you're seeing is just a single level doctor's office, and it doesn't really even have any connectivity with the rest of the shopping center. And so, it's just, I would love to be able to have more incentives that we could give property owners and developers to get what we're looking for. I mean, one thing that may get a little bit more circulation in his site that we're looking at is, in order for him to build, he's gonna of course have to pay impact fees. And so how his site functions is how we're gonna actually look at the impact fees associated with it. And so if it's a standalone building that's just facing 181st, they have to pay fees based on that single building. It's where a shopping center that had circulation and flow throughout, it substantially reduces impact fees. And so those are teeny incentives we get for, give people some reason to provide more circulation. But I'm all for trying to come up with some more ways that we could get people to, build what we want.
I think by the time they come in with their building permit, it's too late.
Oh,
We have to be talking to them a year or two in advance.
Brent, Stacy, and Deborah.
So you touched on what I was going to say, and that was on the fees. So I'm curious, on a project like that building, do you know that single level building that will be constructed, do you know approximately what their total fee from impact fee and permitting and everything, what, just even ballpark of what fees would be on something like that?
Ballpark fees, oh man. Hundreds of thousands, what was it, for the standalone medical?
130,000, I thought, just in the impact.
The traffic impact fee.
So-
And like $1,000.
So wouldn't that tell you, I mean, just knowing that for one story, so it seems like maybe one of the best tools that we could use would be to address it from the cost to build. We can't control raw costs of material, and we can't control labor costs, but we can control fees to a point. And I know we've looked at our impact fees on, like we changed them on restaurants, I remember, just recently. But maybe there's a way that we can incentivize that, yeah, this is what your impact fees are if you're gonna build I'll just use that site as an example, your 1-story building. But you know what, if you do a 3-story building here, well, not only will it not cost you that, it'll even be less, and so what it'll immediately do is bring down their total development and cost per square foot charge. And maybe that's a way to look at, proactively incentivizing rather than penalizing anything. But I don't know, that's just one way. It seems like if we could change those fees somehow, so somebody does consider the benefit of building 2 or 3 times the gross building area than they had originally planned.
Stacy and Deborah.
I heard the word mural a few times on the back of Safeway, and it's been talked about before, but we do have, in our county, if we want to do something on that road, that is something we could do.
Well, and what I heard, and maybe this isn't how you have the conversation, but what I heard was, we've got this tool, do any of those appeal to you? I mean, can that conversation be reversed and say, what would it take? This is what we want. What would it take, developer, to get you to do this? Is it money? Is it an exemption? Or, tax exemption essentially, or an impact fee, or not impact fee, but a permit fee exemption, or is it a developer that's all they can envision is a dental office, and they need a partner that we could maybe help bring in to help them envision and help them think through what that would look like. I mean, I don't know. I'm just making this up, but it feels like we're guessing at what developers might want to make what we want happen, rather than having a dialogue about what is it, and again, I'm not a developer, so maybe all they are interested in is, well, it'll cost us less. Okay, we're done. But maybe it's something else. I don't know.
We have those discussions with developers when we first talk to them at pre-app. We like to go over what the city's vision is with the downtown. We like to explain what the highest and best uses may be for their property. We like to try to encourage them to build what we like them to build. But, what I'm really hearing is when it comes down to it, it's about profitability. It's about money. It's like if a developer's going to build something and sell it off, then they don't really care if it's a dental office or if it's an office with a really nice tenant. They just want it comes down to the bottom line for the most part. I mean, there might be some local developers who feel a little bit differently, but I think generally developers have that kind of mentality. The property owner across the street, Breckenridge, of course, he's the property owner. He's not a developer. So we had multiple discussions with him on stuff, and for him too, it came down to money. And we looked at the underground parking, and he ran some numbers, and it just didn't pencil out. And other things like the office space and uncertainty of the possible tenants they would get for the office space and retail space and whatever it may be. And so I think we need to be thinking about, somehow having easy, low-hanging fruit that we could incentivize through fees, through a different fee mentality if we're going to build what we want.
Nancy?
I'll just mention too that one of the really the very first implementation measure that we've gotten started with after the economic development strategy was adopted was to start working with a consultant who was pretty well known in Seattle development circles, and we have asked her to say, like, how can we get more office development in Kenmore? Because just like Brian was saying, it's like people operate in their comfort zone. If multifamily is working, then my gosh, that's what we're going to build. And so she is. We just got started with her, but probably by mid-year we'll have some recommendations to report back to you with, and it's some of it is I'm hoping it's not only giving us some things to look at as far as what kind of incentives make sense, but also this person is very well connected in the development community, and she is learning about Kenmore a lot, and how many home-based businesses there are, how many of those businesses, like ones involved with the incubator program, are growing and they need space. And so I think she's going to do some good work for us.
Nigel?
I mean, I don't think there is anything out there, but I wanted to ask staff, is there any way to disincentivize vacant land just sitting vacant? And I was just looking up, and this piece of property's been sitting vacant for, you know, the beginning of time, and it seems like the property owner's happy just to pay us $13,000 a year in property tax and just let it sit and get nothing out of it. Is there any way to, I don't know, disincentivize vacant land just sitting there being on the property? I don't think there is, but.
Special taxes for you only.
No, I mean,
Flat taxing.
I mean, there is something, there's a loss to the community having a piece of land like that, just sitting there doing nothing for,
Growing weeds.
30 years, however long,
The do nothing tax.
Well, I mean, in other jurisdictions, if you go to New England, there are places where they tax based on the potential value of the land. And so if you have a parcel and it's sitting empty in a single family zone, your tax is if you built the highest and best use,
Right.
which incentivizes you to actually build the highest and best use because you might as well. Because you're getting hit on improvements you haven't made yet, right?
Where does that happen? I've never heard of that. I'm actually really curious about that.
I would have to look it up. I somewhere New England, like Vermont or New Hampshire or something. There's a few different
Live
places.
free or die.
I'm going off something I read 5 years ago. There are places that do that. I can't remember what it's called. I'll look it up for you. I'll find it.
I'm fascinated. I've never heard of that. That's an interesting.
It does incentivize you to actually make the land be used.
I would imagine.
Tax reduction for community gardens. Hey,
Lots
just
for more. Okay.
to drive home one thing that Brian said, yeah, we do reach out and contact the property owners. The owner of that strip mall where the karaoke place is over there by the post office, that owner is absolutely will not sell, will not do anything. Not only me, but multiple brokers and developers have called that property owner multiple times. Will not sell, will not budge, period. Shit. No bonus, yeah.
What's underneath that? Why would that be the case?
Some people are just buy and hold. That's who they are.
I think you meant the drag queen in Bloom.
Yeah.
What's underneath?
I
think that was a joke.
That's Jacob Chuckle's wife that owns it.
Yeah, I talked to the new Speedy Reedy owner, and same thing, he won't budge. As far as the free market goes, there's definitely, vital businesses, family businesses in that mall. Though it's definitely old. It's Shin's Taekwondo. Our kids take Taekwondo lessons there, and Kumon, the study group, the study business that has everybody going in there. It's a definite need for those businesses. But you're thinking of something like generally beyond an aging mall, or just like how do you get new things? Yeah, isn't that the vision? Isn't that the hope, is that all that old crappy stuff redevelops? Yeah, I definitely see a use for, at one time, the downtown, Ostrom's Drugs and all the rest of it, that itself was new. It was cutting edge. It was 60s. It had its own theme. The boosters were all in favor of that, and at least that very strip mall, I think, still serves a basic market need based on supply and demand for sure. But yeah, incentivizing, we should always discuss that too. I need to know what your vision is then, because I thought it was all about redeveloping in that downtown.
So I have a question on that, because you said you had talked to the owner. Do we, other than a property like that, that's right there in the heart of downtown central, does the city ever approach a property owner just to talk about what can be done with their property? I know that sounds kind of odd, but because I didn't know that. I think that's great that you guys do that. I had no idea. And that seems like, that seems like just a great way to start a rapport for some people that maybe just need that spark to get off the couch to do what they've been planning, but they never really had the incentive, and all of a sudden, the city comes out and says, here, we can help you, and here's what's possible. So that's good to know.
Okay, anything else on this? No?
So kind of question, Main Street has clearly been, probably, I think, done well with their pieces of development, the different phases. But there be any place to bring the people who own property along that street together, have Main Street there and share some of their experience? I'm just trying to think, I can somehow generate a group, something that's positive and envision. Sometimes these people just don't have, it's like they say, I do, storage units, that's all I do. But can you envision somebody to think outside the box, their comfort zone? I don't know.
I've gotten to know these property owners, and some of them are just very keep to themselves. They don't, I can think of one in particular that just doesn't return my phone calls. The Jewel Box property owner, yeah, I would have a hard time believing that person would come to a collaborative meeting to talk about what's possible.
But he knows the land anyway.
No, they do. I'm talking about the property owner.
Oh, the property owner, yeah.
Okay. Joe?
Everybody has a price, right? I mean, if we have intractable property owners, is Main Street, would they be interested in helping us out? Would they be interested in purchasing? I mean, I don't know what the.
We've asked them to.
Oh, okay,
We've brought it up.
okay, good. Are they interested at all? Or no, they're just not? Okay.
They were interested in the Speedy Reedy, but they thought that the person who just bought it, paid too much.
Oh,
What about other areas in our TOD? Is Main Street interested in doing any
Yeah, in fact,
financing development there?
when I said that there was gonna be a parking garage, at the TOD, at the Metro lot, this was a couple of years ago now, but the Main Street representative said, oh, we'd love to do housing on top of that garage.
I know I'm pushing for that to happen on the board.
Okay. Brian?
We've had multiple developers contact us regarding the possible MFTE ordinance in the TOD. We've discussed with them the parking garage, and also have got developers in contact with the Sound Transit and King County Metro. We can have those discussions on the housing and stuff that's associated with the parking garage.
All right, anything else on this? Okay,
But I do like trying to get the 181st owners in the same room. I think we should create that opportunity, whether they come or not. I think we should push for it. So that's one takeaway for me was have a state of the 181st downtown neighborhood meeting with those folks and ask them, this is what we want, what does it take, how's that working for you? Those types of questions. So that's a takeaway we're willing to do.
just to hang on to that, I actually think that's a great idea. That also, it puts them collectively and at the same time on notice that we're paying attention to that and the public's paying attention to that. And if they don't want to show up, that's their prerogative, but everybody else is going to show up. And so I think that's a great idea. So,
okay, so that's what you do.
Yeah.
All right. Ball fields, partner with the schools in St. Edwards, whatever that was here.
okay. This is more of a messaging thing, I think, at this point. The first part of it, the school part. And that is, last year at this time, we, collectively said, we want to do this. We want to explore the possibility of partnering with the district around unused capacity, potentially partnering with them on investing to get increased capacity, dollars equals capacity. I think we talked about. And so you did that. And what we came up with, was there was, out of all the fields, there was only one field that had apparent unused capacity. Well, the district has just improved that. So the final step would be asking them, are you gonna use up all that capacity with your district activities? The probable answer is yes. And so then we will close the book. And so on that. And so I guess I'd like some messaging about that to, because people keep asking about ball fields and they keep asking about partnerships. And so I think we just haven't been clear that we went down that road completely, or we will, as one more potential conversation. And then we close that. And similarly with St. Edwards, I think once we're past the EIS and depending on where that goes, just messaging. It's like, okay, here's what we did. Here's where we're at, and just being super clear. And maybe we feel like we've already done that, but it doesn't hurt to try it, to keep doing it. And just, have it on the website. Ball fields, it's like, here's what we did, 15 different bullet points, status, closed, it just put a bow on it, with the district.
Stacy.
So I agree with that messaging, because I think the public thinks that we aren't interested in engaging with the school district. And I don't think that they understand that we did do that. And I know, everybody else might have their own opinion, but for me, if I'm going to authorize $5 million for something, it's gotta be for new capacity. And I just don't see that with the school district. So that's just where I am on the school district thing. But whatever we decide, I don't think the public understands that we did look at those fields, and we are looking at, that there just isn't the capacity to spend that much money there. So I do like that, I guess.
Rob.
Recently, maybe a month or so ago, Debbie and I went and wanted to just make sure we had a thorough conversation with the school district about it one more time. And they definitely didn't seem interested in Kenmore Middle School, but they said, if you were to improve anything in Kenmore, we want you to improve Kenmore Elementary, because it's just a dirt lot. And they'd love to have synthetic turf and a nice brand new ball field there. But they recognize that would only get marginal new capacity because it's already booked for practices, not for games. So it would get you games, weekend games. And then the other ball field they said that might get us some marginal new capacity was the soft pit, the softball field, girls' high school softball field. That's natural turf there, and upgrading it to synthetic turf with lighting, assuming you're working around high school sports and not putting a damper on any high school sports that are already there now, you could get some marginal capacity at the girls' softball field. But the St. Edward ball field, on the other hand, you'd go from 0 to 100 in capacity. And so that's where the most bang for your buck is, as far as capacity is concerned, is the St. Edward ball field, because you go from basically, I don't want to say 0 because they play cricket there, but you would suddenly open that ball field up to baseball, soccer, lacrosse, softball, and you open it up to all those sports where it's not being used for those sports now. So I see where you're going with this. I think the message would be, we could partner with the school district, but it would only give us marginal new capacity.
Yep. And it will cost a fair amount
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Right, so just.
Yeah, and the other point I want to make is, I don't think you should be going down two paths at the same time as far as this is concerned. I don't think you should be spending $300,000 on an EIS for the ball fields and at St. Edward, and also exploring whether we should be doing fields with the school district. Because what if you spent your $300,000 on the EIS and then change your mind and want to do ball fields at the school district. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense to be going down two paths at the same time. I think you should pick one.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, and I precisely disagree because we're simply gonna have more need with increased population and more need for baseball fields if the sport remains popular. It's probably prudent as well if one of the two becomes less possible or seems less likely as time goes on. But I think it's important that as part of the messaging, as you say, the messaging aspect, to keep looking at the possibility of the increased capacity, as folks who've testified before us or spoken in front of us in many public meetings have asked us to keep on looking at the explore the extra capacity that can be gotten from, I guess, the girls softball field and Kenmore Elementary for sure.
That's what I jumped over here. so.
Yeah. So I had a question on Kenmore Middle School. So they just put in new grass this summer. So if we put up lights to extend the seasons on the ends, would that be something they wouldn't be interested in? Seems like that would increase capacity.
It would get you marginal new capacity. But there's a whole block of homes right there and it would be a tough sell, I
There's
think.
Lockwood on one side, there's the school itself on another, there's a parking lot on the other. So compared to big areas in general, it has less impact on people. I mean, you turn out the lights at 9 o'clock or whatever, just like we were gonna do in St. Edward. So it seems like there's less houses around there than other areas of equal size. So just, I mean, they've already improved the field, so to get more hours per year out of use out of it. So it was just an idea.
Okay, Brent?
Well, first, I want to say, this is nice that it was brought up by somebody else other than me. And that this was great discussion. I feel like, at times I've overspoke on the issue, so I appreciate a lot that it's still a significant issue for my colleagues, so that means something. And I agree with Rob about two separate paths. I think it's hard to focus on both because, first of all, we really don't even have the money to do one right now based on our CIP, but if both of them had options, it makes it difficult to, it just doesn't make sense to go down both paths. But I do look forward to seeing the EIS at the St. Edward completed and to understand what's possible or not possible at that property.
I guess I'm I'm not quite sure why it doesn't make sense to go down both paths. I guess I'm concurring with Joe that it seems like if our goal is sort of like affordable housing, if our goal is to just have more ball field capacity, I guess I'd want the menu of options with the price tag and expected benefit laid out for me. And, at the high end, we're gonna hopefully have St. Ed's, which is going from 0 to 100, right? But it's got a big price tag. So that's your high benefit, high cost option. Is there anything in between, which might be, marginal benefit, not much money? I guess my preference would be to have the options laid out.
Well, I think you should do that, but I think you should do it before you spend $300,000 on an EIS for the ball fields. That would be a waste.
How would we know if the ball field was possible without spending $300,000 to do the, I mean, you don't even know you could do it.
Same thing with the school ball fields too. You'd have to do SEPAs and EISs or whatever for those too.
Okay, so in order to even get the information about cost, you have to spend money to do that.
When you have a massive wetland next to like Kenmore Elementary, as an example.
That would be just as tricky, more than St. Edward.
And the neighbors at Kenmore Middle School could
Sure, okay,
revolt and
okay.
create a big
I was
mess.
thinking it would be almost zero cost to
No,
just
I
get
wish-
the information, but I guess it's not. So now I understand. Thank you.
Joe,
Just the brief example, wouldn't the permitting agency be the city for the school district?
Yeah.
School district, right, rather than state law. Just a thought to consider.
Which is a big,
That's a valid.
that is a valid point.
okay,
So my point is, I think it would be a waste of money for us to spend $300,000 on an EIS. And then about that time say, oh, never mind, we want to partner with the schools. So I'd like to make a decision soon on which path we're going down. Am I making sense, or do you guys not agree with me, or?
I guess we're already on the, yeah.
Aren't we on the
We
EIS?
are,
Right.
but I want to make
So-
sure that if we are, that we're not spending tons of resources on schools.
This is the messaging issue, right?
Yeah.
So we just, I think, come back to the realization that we're on the EIS path and that it would be costly to even explore another path at the same time. So we need to take this one to its logical conclusion and then make decisions about, and now we have a little more information from the district. So the status, instead of closed, the status is, we will revisit pending the outcome of the EIS. So that, it's a messaging thing.
so, in order of march, question. The order of march is St. Edwards and then a lesser commitment at this time to the school district. Joe?
So your thought was explore the EIS, and then if that isn't feasible, or if there's a need for it, then to revisit, as you said, right? The question
But that would be
partnering
the
with the
time,
schools. So
yeah,
we're not saying partnering with the schools is entirely over for
Oh,
eternity.
right, not,
But
yeah, absolutely.
It's resting.
It's kind of in.
Have a pause,
Yes, there you
as
go.
the unfortunate recent popular phrase is.
Well, and part of the message is, our staff followed up with the school district again, and these are the couple schools that they think there might be some room for partnership, and we're gonna put that after the AS.
With all
Is it-
those caveats that you know,
Yeah.
which is, and
You'd have to do.
Kenmore L's right a
CFOs
wetland, and, yeah, exactly.
But we haven't ignored the problem. We as a city have again reached out, and here's kind of what the cost of that approach might be.
So I guess just substantively, I just want to reemphasize, I disagree. I think it's more prudent to pursue both at the present time, to be able to have all those options available early on. And even if it's pre-EIS and everything for all the city properties, the school district properties, it's worthwhile to at least have some discussion with the school district, see if it goes anywhere for further possibility.
David?
I thought we've had those discussions with the school district. I thought that the school district has told us that there's marginal expansion capabilities to the programs. And I thought that has been pretty well studied.
Just that-
Yeah, so I don't know what more there is to carry on that line.
Ms. Finley brought before the council a number of questions for the school district and more information that we could get from them. And she was not satisfied with her analysis of, did this represent the actual usage of different fields in the inventory? So I do think strongly there's more information that we need from the school district to look at that.
Okay. Another comment? So I'm gonna try something here. I'm hearing consensus with one disagreement that we pursue St. Edwards first, and that, continue down that path. Not say no to school district, but just sort of rest that activity at this point, allow that to happen. And then, depending on that, take that up. But all of this is at the service of the initial question and urging that we get messaging in place about all that. And it's either broadcast to folks or available on the website or whatever that messaging format would be, or formats. Is that correct?
It's a fair summary. Okay. Unless anybody else wants to.
Okay. All right. Is there another?
Looks like the next one we're gonna talk about is adjourn.
It is.
Let's not talk about it too long.
Sure. Okay, we are finished with the agenda. We are a bit early. That's always good. And we'll be back here tomorrow to pursue the printed agenda as it's been distributed. I think our session begins tomorrow at 9 o'clock, right? Breakfast at 8. We'll be here at 9 o'clock and talk about Lakeland. All right.
Who keeps us informed?
Are we adjourned, Mr. Mayor? Are we adjourned?
And with that, if there's no further business or information to come in front of us, we are adjourned for the day. We will meet back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
And then, so to that extent, check in, and they said you couldn't have till 3, it's after that. So,
We can leave our stuff here, correct?
Yeah, we check in our room.
Yeah.
So, bye for now.
So we can leave our binders here.